Welcome back to Creative Dirt Podcast. I'm your host, Honor T, and this is a podcast all about cultivating creativity in your daily life. So glad that everybody is joining us again. I feel like it's been a really busy season recently. Like things are just busy. Did that podcast we recently was our first giveaway ever. So thanks to everyone who participated in that. Have announced that winner. Personal news, just came back from the city of Seattle. I had never been there before. Got to visit a lovely and creative, crafty friend. And it's a joy to be able to catch up with old friends and hang out and the joy of community with your loved ones. We're going to dive into today's episode. But before we do that, I have a question. Do you guys remember those like chicken soup books? There was like books that were about like chicken soup for the teenage soul, or I think there was also like for different types of souls, so like chicken soup for the single soul, chicken soup for like chocolate lovers, or in country music they had a bunch of different versions for that. You know what those chicken soup books are? They're basically like anthologies of like hopeful stories. In the cover it says stories to rekindle the soul and open the heart. And my dog is currently like climbing all over me because she wants to know more about chicken soup. But these were stories about like hope and love and gratitude. And some of them were kind of cheesy, but they were honestly like, they were like pretty good. They were like, be grateful for what you've got and like personal stories from people who had been through some stuff. And I would actually argue that those chicken soup books were like the dawn of the self care movement. I feel like it was like the 90s version of like normalizing your like feeling your feelings and like reflecting on them in an era when therapy was like not a thing yet and was not like destigmatized yet. So like in light of exploring emotions and feelings through stories, today we're actually going to be looking at the practice of self-reflection and writing as a method of self-care. So I know when I think about like journaling, I kind of seize up because like I hate doing it and it kind of makes me nervous. I just feel like I either have nothing to say or I feel like I write like forever and it doesn't really tell a cohesive story or like make sense. Saying your thoughts in like a written form doesn't always look like a journal or what I did today diary. It can look in like look so many different types of creative ways. So in this section, all about self reflection, we're going to talk to two amazing guests that are going to help us explore what it looks like to engage in self reflection in a meaningful and creative way. So today, we are talking to a dear friend of mine, Nina Coyle, who is a writer, about her experience with writing and art journaling. And then next time in part two, we're going to talk to an amazing singer songwriter and friend of mine. I'm so glad I call her a friend. About songwriting as a method of personal reflection and self care. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and hop into this conversation with the amazing and illustrious Nina Coyle. So let's get dirty. Oh my gosh, Nina, welcome to Creative Dirt Podcast.
Thank you.
So today's episode is all about self-reflection. And so this is like a broad category I'm giving to journaling, writing, all this kind of stuff. And so I thought you'd be an excellent guest. So if you wouldn't mind sort of introducing yourself to all the guests, telling us about your creative stuff, what you do.
Can do. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. My name is Nina Coyle. I do a lot of things creatively, I think. Primarily, I do a lot of writing. I write a lot of poetry, and then also love to collage, love to pick up just small random hobbies along the way, which you well know.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I'm excited to talk about creativity as self-care because it is different to me than what like capitalism tries to sell. And I guess for me has a lot more to do with like how I approach even my own creative practice and the different forms that it takes.
That's amazing. Yes, I've always admired that you are very into like chasing creativity, whether it's writing or like you mentioned, like
doing small little creative things. You're really good at that, and you're very committed to it too. And I'm always like, I feel like you're more committed to it than me. Because I'm always like, oh, I want to do fun stuff, but you're actually doing it. And that's what my idea and hope for this podcast is to get people from the part of like thinking about it and like, oh, that would be nice to do stuff, to actually being a doer. And you're a doer. So that's amazing. So tell me a little bit about how long you've been writing for, how you sort of developed this as a hobby.
Sure. A long time. I think I definitely started writing a lot as a kid and had some great teachers along the way who like stoked my storytelling or poetry. And then I was thinking about this morning. My mom is like probably the first and best example that I have of someone who just created and made space to do it regardless of what was going on and could like hop from thing to thing to thing. So I know we're on a podcast, no one can see them, but I'm wearing earrings that she made right now.
Your mom made those?
Yeah.
They're gorgeous.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Because she is someone who has always like just tried new things. And when she finds joy doing them, she makes space for it. And so she, it was the 90s. So she was like into rubber stamping and scrapbooking and sewing and painting. And I had beading birthday parties and that sort of thing. And so I think it normalized like having supplies for that sort of stuff around all the time. And just made it like, yeah, really normal to opt for picking up a journal or paint or anything else and doing something with it when I like felt like I needed an outlet.
That's amazing. I think hearing you say scrapbooking, we definitely need to bring that back. I don't know where it went, but it's literally so fun.
I think I kind of do it for my friends now, like mixed media collage, and especially toward the beginning of the year or like a big milestone has become such a great way for me to reflect and connect with friends. And I actually this year for like gifts for a lot of people, I went through these massive boxes of like scrap paper and old gift wrap and photos and postcards and made collage kits for friends with like the things that I thought reflected their personalities or like dreams that they had shared with me or those sorts of things. So I could like set them up with a little kit and a little board to like,
I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah, it was really, really fun to do because a lot of them have like kept their own things and still kind of love to scrapbook. And I think it's coming back. I think it's back.
It's back. It's already here, guys. So get your scrapbooking stuff out. That's so amazing. Yeah. So I love that you are obviously a writer and also do kind of delve into the mixed media stuff that you mentioned, doing the collage. That's really fun because sometimes writing as a person who is, I wouldn't say like I'm a hobbyist writer or like I would not call myself a writer. It can seem a little bit less daunting to maybe start with like a collage journaling project or an art journal. And then kind of, if you are interested in writing, kind of delve more into that. So you actually, speaking of your mixed media collages, you did that 100-day project.
I did.
Can you tell us about what that is?
I tried. Yeah. Yes. So gosh, I think it was last winter. I got introduced to this concept of a 100 days project, which was really just trying to explore creating any sort of creative practice for 100 days and reflecting on it as I went. There's this incredible illustrator and artist and just like all around great human and facilitator named Caitlin Metz, who introduced me to the idea of the project. Yeah, I decided around that time that for 100 days, I would try taking a walk and then picking up just like two to like 5 things in nature that just stuck out to me on that walk. And then I would go home and make a collage using those things and also using this like really cool plasticine wax-based clay.
Okay.
And like creating like a tiny little clay sculpture, use like the pretty leaf for petals or twig or whatever I found on my walk, just to kind of take some time for myself and like connect with my space, my neighborhood, all of those things, and then write and reflect on it.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So you would just pick up the objects and just write something. Would you write something about the object or how the object made you feel? Or
I really I would set a timer, make the collage, and then more or less just try to figure out like a title to the collage or that sort of thing. And I went into it and kind of titled the project like my practice makes project. Like not practice makes perfect, but just like practice makes, period.
Some things.
Like anything.
Nothing.
And that's right. Like it just is. And that's what I was trying to also, I think set myself up with like softness in that way. And it worked out because I definitely, you know, made it to like day 53 and then stepped away and it was what it was. And could still be like, it's something that I'm thinking about picking up again. And a friend was like, you know, it's like 100 days of showing up. Like it's not about the output or that it's 100 consecutive days or that it's this perfect thing, but it's like, no, can you just show up for yourself in this space 100 different times, whenever that is, whether you're counting it or not.
That's really hard. The consistency part is so tough. I've tried to do that, and don't laugh, but I tried to do this with TikTok.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to post, because I did a pact with my friend. We're like, we're just going to post every day for a month. And it's so hard.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you can, I don't know, if you can bring it to something where you like love it and you're doing it for the sake of doing it and not, like you mentioned, the sake of like, I need the end product. It's got to look like this and that. It really helps. But I will say, a lot of your end products that you came up with were so cute. She made like leaf animals and they were really cute.
So. It was fun to just like explore with random things. And it tapped into just like that childlike space of like, I feel 5 years old walking around my neighborhood, like looking for a leaf that looks fun. And then I'm going to pick it up and carry it around and feel 5 years old.
Hey, this actually reminds me of a time when I was in recess a long time ago. This was in Bethesda Elementary, and I would pick up like rocks and like scrape them on the ground and like try to mold them and like shape them in different things. So I was like a rock girl, and I had a whole crew of girls, and we were like the rock girls. And some people would play like tetherball, and some people would swing, but no, we were like shaping rock.
Yeah, rock club.
Rock club.
I love it.
You got to get into rock club. Okay, so let's talk about your writing. Are there specific themes that you explore? Is it more stream of consciousness? Is it a journaling effort?
Yeah, it's not a journaling effort. That is something that I've always, every time I've tried it, it hasn't stuck. It's funny because we've been talking about collage and all these different forms, and I feel like my writing is really that way too. Like a lot of themes that show up in it are elements of like the world around me, my neighborhood, trees and birds and all of those things. And I think in the past year specifically, I've been exploring more of what it is to bring myself into my work and like dive into aspects of my identity and family story and those things. So it's like a little bit of everything shows up in that space. Yeah. And then just kind of also depends on what's going on in the world or in my life day to day.
There's a lot of things going on in the world.
So many things.
I feel like writing is probably a good way to like process a lot of the, because it seems when you see a lot of crazy events going on from your point of view, sometimes there are things you can do about it. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. And you kind of sit with a lot of anxiety. I sit with a lot of anxiety. And so writing, I feel like, is probably a good way to do something with your, well, obviously there are ways to actually do things to help people, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But in terms of as like a mental health space for yourself.
It definitely is. Like, I think for me, when I reflect on it, like writing can seem like something that's really like mental and you're just like in your head, but it actually helps me like get back into my body with what's going on because I try both in like poetry that I read and in poetry I write to engage with like sensory detail and like checking in with my emotions and where my headspace is at. And then also like paying attention to how the light is hitting the floor in the room that I'm in and writing about that and wondering about, you know, how is the light hitting a space in another part of the world where something's happening, or like I don't know, what's like beautiful on a table in the home of a friend who's like grieving something. Like those are the kinds of things that my writing practice helps me be curious about and like, helps me deal with everything that's going on.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love that. So you've had opportunities to lead writing workshops before. Can you tell me about what sort of exercises you take your writing friends through?
Totally. I really love to lead a writing workshop or just writing groups generally. Working both with kids and with adults has been super fun. With adults, we tend to just do these like generative writing exercises that are prompt based and always just kind of an invitation for like, go with what comes up. Who knows what happens? And so in those spaces, we might be writing about like 5 memories tied to hands, or like I'll lead people through just kind of a visualization exercise that's more like close your eyes and picture an animal and just go with whatever animal comes first and pay attention to their face and just see what comes up and write on that for 5 or 6 minutes. When I work with kids, I like to make the whole environment a little more immersive. And so like last summer, I was running a group with girls like 2nd to 7th grade. So this really wide range. And we didn't have any like major technology in the space available, but I have like a really old overhead projector like we used to have in school.
Oh yeah.
With transparencies and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I brought in like colored pieces of cellophane and put them on the projector, and we turned off all the lights in the room and would make the whole room like red or orange or pink, and like think about taste or smell or memories or emotions that were tied with those colors. And then use those to like write a story or write a poem or draw a picture and then write something that brings up for you. Yeah, it's just like a fun way to kind of get people into a different headspace that's not as directly like what's on my mind right now or what's hard about life right now. But, you know, maybe I ask people to like start writing about a sound that they love and it brings up a memory and a space for them to just like unpack something a little bit more.
That's very cool. Okay. Yeah. I feel like a lot of these prompts that you're speaking of really connect to what you said earlier about your writing being more about being in your body, and it's very sensory, and it's about writing about what you've done with your hands and that kind of stuff. And I feel like that does connect to your training as a yoga instructor. This is all connected here.
Everything shows up everywhere.
Everything's everywhere all at once. So do you feel like your yoga training has helped you with your writing practice, or are there any connections there for you?
I think there are. It's not something I think about a lot, so it's fun to kind of hear you make that connection. I think my yoga practice has helped me like slow down and just connect with present moment a bit more, and that absolutely like shows up in my writing. Makes me a little more curious about like even just how my body is feeling on a given day, or noticing how if I'm writing about something, what like shifts in my body as I'm writing, and kind of doing that like check-in as I go is like a big area of overlap between those things.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So if we have anybody who's listening who does not have a writing practice, but is interested in beginning the journey of a writing practice, what would be the best place to start?
Ooh. I mean, I think start small, right? And simple, and like something that might sound a little silly, but could be fun for someone who just wants to start new and maybe doesn't want the daunting task of, I'm going to journal every day or I'm going to write a poem every day. This is another like tactile and childlike thing, but I really love to go to Walgreens, get like a pack of crayons and reach in there and like pull a color out and set a timer. So you're not like feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to be here for 20 minutes, but set a timer for like 8 minutes and look at that color and like make a list of things that color makes you think about, or memories that it brings up, or feelings, or anything that just comes up engaging with that thing, and go with whatever shows up. I think that's a practice that I encourage people in my writing groups to like go along with whenever we are writing, and especially on a timer. Like you can feel really frustrated because a story's not coming or phrases aren't coming, and like we celebrate false starts if something feels like that. And it's just like, just write. Like a writer is someone who writes. It's not like this big, you don't need publications, you don't need anything else. But maybe like pick a color, see what happens, play with it, and then at the end of the time, set it aside and like maybe throughout the day, other things will come to mind and you can like keep a note on your notes app or whatever you want to do. But do that. And then the next day or a couple days later or once a week, whenever it works in your schedule, find another color, whether it's like picking a crayon out of a box or just like looking around the space you're in. Notice a color, name it, set like a 8-minute timer and just like write.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I feel like I usually think about writing in two places. Like I either have to do journaling and be the consistent person who does it every day, or I have to be the person who is, I'm writing a book.
Yeah.
And there's no in between. And so that's why I feel like writing to me sometimes feels kind of daunting, because it's like, I don't necessarily want to do either of those things.
Right.
But what you just mentioned, I can pull out a color and like, okay, red and apple, got it. Red in these curtains, got it, you know? So that's a great idea. And it's a much easier, slippery slope to get onto the writing ski lodge.
I think so. I love that. I think too, like one of the things that has changed the game for me with writing as a personal practice is allowing it to be communal. And like, you know, writing can feel like it has to be this like super isolated. I'm sitting down with a blank page and that's really intimidating. And I found that there really is a great energy and like either getting together with one person or a couple of people and just committing to like trying something together for a few minutes or working on a project in that space. Like it's so much easier for me to write when I'm with other people and we're all just going to like try it.
That's very interesting. Actually, that makes me think of like either being in college or in high school or in school settings and you go to the library or you go to Starbucks and you sit with your friend and you just do your work or write.
Right.
And it's a much more fun way to work and do your writing. So I love that. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think about writing as a communal thing, but now I will.
Yeah. And they're like, you know, we're in Nashville. There are groups all over town that get together. And like, there's one I know of that truly is just called like Shut Up and Write. And they get together
There you go.
and like get some food and sit down and just take some time to see what happens if anything happens. And, you know, like always being gentle with yourself. If things like don't wind up, like that's something I have to remind myself of all the time because it can be frustrating.
Yeah. How do you kind of deal with that when you are writing something and you're judging it? Because I feel like I'm like, well, this is no good, so I'm never going to pick this up again.
Yeah, I try really hard not to just like ditch something. But I think really it does come back to community for me and reminding myself or like commiserating with other people who are all feeling that way or have felt that way about their creative practices or projects or whatever they're working on. It's like with writing, even when something is published, like there's always the opportunity to revise. And I'm trying for my own self to like, I don't know, be more curious about what revision could bring and view it not as like correcting something to make it perfect, but like thinking about how a piece could transform into something new. Yeah, there's this writer named Shira Ehrlichman who I took a workshop from, and Shira is someone who thinks about revision in this really like generative, like metamorphosis way where it's not just like red pen to paper, how do I make this better, but just like, what does this thing want to be? I don't know. Let's like see. Shira has this exercise where you like take a few minutes, write a poem of just like stream of consciousness, and then tear the piece of paper in half into 2 columns, and then look at the words that fall on each column and see if like those are going to create something new. Like they're just ways.
Like clay.
Yeah.
It's like moldable.
To like
malleable.
Shift around what you're working with. And I like need that kind of energy when I'm trying to figure out like what is happening here.
I actually had the fun experience of being able to do like a brief art therapy session with like a group, and it was really cool. And we had this exercise where the art therapist had sand. We did like sand art, and you had a black piece of paper, and you had colored sand that you put on the page. And it was very much like you're just moving the sand around, like even those like Zen garden stuff with a rake. You're just using your fingers to like make stuff and change stuff. It's like constantly changing. And so I kind of like the idea of like just things are changing. They're not going to like last forever. It doesn't have to be on a headstone. Like not set in stone.
Right.
You can change things all the time. And even with writing, even though maybe it doesn't seem a little bit less fluid, like it's like actually, okay, you got a pen on a piece of paper. You can't erase that. But, you can always tear it in half. So.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. Yes. Okay. So we talked a little bit about not judging your work, but I feel like you've even gotten to the point where you are willing to take your work and then present it like publicly because you've done some readings. How do you get sort of to the space of like, what do you feel? How do you do that? I feel like that would be scary.
It is scary sometimes. And I think it's helped me to like get into communities of other writers and spaces just to have like shared experience in specifically reading poetry out loud. Like for me, even if I'm home alone, like with a book of poems, I will read it out loud because I love playing with how words sound and experiencing that in space. And so readings for me, like, yeah, can be super vulnerable. I get like really stressed out usually the day of, and I'm like maybe trying to write a new piece the day of, which is, not always successful, but I try to view those spaces as like an opportunity to connect with people more so. And like kind of in the same way that you go to a concert for an experience, I view readings like that. Like it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm like trying to get people to like fall in love with my work or whatever, but it's like I'm trying to invite people into a space with me for the next like 5 minutes or 8 minutes or 15 minutes where, yeah, I'll read poems that maybe bring up an emotional reaction or response, or maybe just feel really playful or have a really cool rhythm to them. But it's more just to like get people to slow down and like maybe pick up on a couple of details in the words that remind them of something or bring up a reaction in them or don't, and are just, a cool opportunity to sit with other people in communal space and just listen, which I don't feel like we get to do a ton.
No. It's a lot of just like receiving what's online and receiving. But I like that it seems like when you are presenting your work and reading your work, it seems like it's very much like a giving sort of attitude that you have, and like a gracious, this is what I have to share with you, and not like, you better like me. Not of course,
Right.
Of course you wouldn't be that way, but it's just like a cool mindset. But I'm really comparing it to social media. And when you see folks online who are like, this is how hot I look, and this is that, and this is that, it's very much like I want to get people to think I'm cool and all this kind of stuff. But I like that your mindset around sharing your art it's more of a giving too.
Yeah, thanks. That's really a kind reflection. I think I'm that way because it's also how I encounter a lot of art. And like when I think about the artists, whether they're writers or musicians or painters who I connect with the most, they also kind of write and present with a similar, at least as it comes off to me, like a similar approach of, here's this thing, like it belongs to me and it also doesn't. Like,
that's cool.
Maybe you'll connect with it. Maybe it will help, move you toward like action in a justice way or reflection in a personal way, or like, especially as a person of color and like a mixed race person, there are a lot of mixed race poets who write about their experiences and it's representation for me. And that is something that has been like really special. And so I try to remember like those moments that I've had with other writers' work and want to create something similar with my own stuff.
That's fantastic. Well, you do a great job at it.
Thank you.
Let's talk about like consistency a little bit. Do you have a consistent, I'm sitting down 9 a.m. every day, writing for 30 minutes practice, or not?
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah. There have been times where like that has been something I've tried to do, or with that 100-day project that we talked about, like what I tend to do more often is have a consistent notes app where I can just drop small things into it when I feel inspired or I notice something or I hear a line from a conversation or a movie that just like sparks something for me. I think my most consistent practice is just taking note of those things. so I have kind of this like drawer of little observations that I can go like pull from and pick from when I do feel more inspired or have time to write for like, 10 to 30 minutes
That's
or whatever
cool.
it is.
It's like, I like the drawer of inspiration.
Yeah.
And it's similar to those little scrapbooking kits
Exactly.
you created. Like, whenever you're ready, you've got the kit.
It's here. Yeah. It like takes a lot of pressure off for me. Yeah. I don't know. Have you read Big Magic from Elizabeth Gilbert? It's incredible and like all about creativity. And one of the things that I think about a lot from that podcast, and she has a really old TED talk too about it, is she kind of positions creativity and like ideas as kind of these like little like beings or like spirits that are just like floating in the air and looking for someone who wants to collaborate with them. And so I try to kind of think about creativity that way, where it's like, where is there an idea, like a creative idea or a poem that wants to become something? And how can I just be open to like noticing when I get inspired and working with that thing versus sitting down at my desk and just being like, oh my gosh, I have to make something happen right now. Because that like really rarely works for me. Versus, if I'm like driving around and find that I'm like daydreaming about something or thinking about something, or a random like memory comes up, or I see a mockingbird doing something funny, like, is that a little like clue? And can I follow it? That's a lot more helpful to me than setting up like a rigid practice personally.
That's awesome. I feel like that's a really great way to kind of let go of control and that judgment sense, because it's like, this idea is not even mine.
Right.
It's just out there.
And like, it'll find someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got one last question for you.
Okay.
And this question is, why do you love to write? What is it about writing that you love and keep coming back to?
Yeah. I think it just helps me feel more myself. I don't know that writing, like, I don't think that writing will like be the thing for everyone. And it just like happens to be one of the things for me and has been since I was really young. And I was that kid who, when we had like timed writing prompts in elementary school, I loved it. Like, I got so excited to flip that piece of paper over and see what kind of story I was like being challenged to create. And I know that that's not everyone's experience, but for me, for me, they really were. And so, like I come back to it over and over again because it helps me connect with like some true part of who I am.
That's beautiful. I love that. I feel like I feel similarly with like creating, even just like when I talk about creating, I'm thinking of like crafting stupid stuff, like making little like crocheted animals and stuff and random stuff like that. It also just makes me feel more myself, because it's like, at least like that's just one thing that you have that's yours and nobody can tell you how to do it, what to do. All the ideas come from you, or they come from the air, wherever it's coming from. But yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. Nina, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
This was so fun.
I loved it.
Well, there you have it. Thank you guys so much for listening today. And huge thanks to Nina for joining us on the podcast. I love that she talks about writing in the form of like art writing and art journaling, and, journaling about how your body feels in certain ways, and just really taking the writing element out of your head, and putting it more into like that creative space, or more into like how you're feeling sort of space. It's a really freeing way to look at writing, and very positive and hopeful, and really takes the pressure off. So guys, please remember, I'm rooting for you. I hope you try some art journaling this week, or try something like Nina did, where you go on a walk and pick up creative things and start to tell your 100 days of creativity story. I hope to see you back again next time for this part 2 about personal reflection. And please don't forget that I'm rooting for you. Until next time.